Are we on? Are we live yet?
We're on.
We are on?
Yeah.
All right. Exciting. Hello, Keiko. We're on a 3-day weekend.
Oh my gosh. I don't think I've ever seen you this excited. What's going on?
Oh, 3-day weekend. I didn't.
Do you have plans for the 3-day weekend?
My middle son's coming home. That's exciting.
That's exciting.
Oh yes, it is. I'm going to build a retaining wall for our front whatever landscape stuff. That's exciting.
That's exciting. People enjoy doing that.
Oh my god. Well, I'm pretty. It just helps with the cardiovascular, and I'm pretty built. I think a lot of people would say. So
I've heard that around the street.
Well, yeah, so
it's supposed to be really nice this weekend, though.
Yes, it is.
So it's going to be like a really great weekend to just do a bunch of yard work.
And what are you going to be doing? 3-day weekend. What are you going? Huh? Are you there? Oh no, she froze up. Now it's up to me. So, what is everybody actually doing this 3-day weekend? Is there anything that we are that somebody's doing? Keiko, you've frozen. I've never actually seen that movie, Frozen. There you are.
Sorry. My computer says that I can try and connect to an Ethernet. I can try and do that while we're here. Apologies.
No, you're fine. What do you got planned this weekend?
We don't have anything planned.
Nothing?
Nothing. I honestly, I can't find my cord. On Monday, when you had said that, we don't have work on Monday, it's Memorial Day, I was like, what? I just lost all track of days in quarantine. I was fully going to come into the office on Monday.
Oh, were you?
I was. But I'm so used to not having holidays that now that I have them, it's weird. Because in news, you don't get holidays off.
I was gonna ask you. I thought that was something that you just don't plan on. Oh, Memorial Day is coming up, and we're gonna go camping or whatever.
Yeah. First of all, I don't do camping.
Neither do I.
That sounds like a punishment to me.
I don't do that. Sandy said I did a very nice job filling time. Thank you, Sandy. I appreciate that.
Did you talk about Frozen?
Yeah, when you got Frozen. Yeah, I was filling time. I was talking. Pretty big stuff there. No, I don't camp either. My idea of camping is when room service closes at 11. That's my idea of camping. So
yeah, I just don't find it cute to sleep on dirt.
I understand that.
And bears and wolves.
Wolves?
I'm sure there's got to be wolves around here, right?
I don't know. I'm guessing there's coyotes.
That's basically a wolf.
Well, I think is it?
I don't know.
I know a fox. Have you ever seen a fox? I mean, other than me. Thank you.
Your episodes are on point today.
Have you ever seen a fox?
No.
Okay, they're tiny little dogs.
Right.
So, Phil says are there wolves in Ohio? I don't know. I don't know whether there are.
Vermont. There was moose in Vermont.
Oh, I've seen one of those.
I've never seen one, but I heard there's a lot of meese.
Yeah, meese. No, it's moose.
That song instantly popped in my head when you asked me if I've ever seen a fox.
Uh-huh.
Instantly, my brain went, have you ever heard that song?
No.
Oh, it's like I think it's like a YouTube video. And it's literally just someone being annoying going, do, 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 do. It's great. If you ever want to like annoy someone, play that video. Just
like Baby
YouTube
Shark?
it.
Okay. Is this like Baby Shark?
I know that everybody hates Baby Shark, and I get that. I do too. However, we have just discovered there is a T-Rex Baby Shark version.
Oh.
So my sanity is slowly coming back. But I've also gotten so good at like ignoring that song.
Uh-huh.
But there's many versions. There's Good Night Baby Shark. There's T-Rex.
I thought there was just one.
No, there's one baby shark, but there is baby T-Rex.
Oh, wow.
There is, and I can't say it too loud because if he catches me saying it, then he's going to make me play it.
Ah. And then that would not be good because we don't need that. We don't need a theme song to this little thing we got going on here.
We are good. Your wife is joining us.
Oh, hello there. I washed her clothes last night, so she better be nice.
That's very nice of you.
Yes.
Very nice.
Thank you. So you're not doing anything like are you and Matthew going out to dinner or anything or?
No. I know that they just opened up, but here's my thing. So on Monday, I went to the hair salon.
Yeah.
And I found myself like Monday morning starting to feel a little anxious about it. It's like I saw on Instagram, they were doing everything. They put up, I go to the Lacquer Gallery. There's a couple locations, but I go to the one in Harrison West. And so they put up like the dividers, the glass dividers. Everyone has to wear a mask. You know, their door is open so that you don't have to touch it. All of their like snacks that they have out, they were like, please don't touch that. Ask the receptionist to get it for you. So like, they were taking all of the right precautions, but just seeing it, I was getting a little nervous. Wow. And I was like, I don't know if I want to do this. But then I have to say, I went there, wore a mask the whole time. My hairdresser wore a mask the whole time. The whole place smelt like it was like just cleaned. And like they were cleaning as they were moving from station to station. So I felt a lot better about it. I don't know if I'm ready for food though. Yeah. Like I feel like those are two different things. Like I'm going to dip my foot into the pond, but then I'm not going to fully dive in.
Well, and isn't that,
I don't think I'm ready.
Isn't that funny that, I mean, it used to be it was normal. Oh, yeah, we'll go out to dinner, we'll do this. And because
I used to run out the door to go get my hair cut. And now I'm like, okay, yeah, I think I'm going to go. Okay. Yeah, I'm going to do it.
I wonder if is anybody else out there feeling that?
I'd be interested in knowing that. I hope someone is, not for the sake of like, I wish that upon people, but like, so that I don't feel as crazy.
Yeah.
Because like I've just been in my house and I feel like a lot of people have just sitting in your own house. And then it's like all of a sudden, like you can slowly start entering the world again. Mm-hmm. And it's a little frightening. Sandy says she went to the salon today, was totally nervous before going in. Oh, that makes me feel a lot better, Sandy.
But was that because her roots were dark? Or I don't know. I'm just kidding. I love
we don't talk about women's roots.
I love you, Sandy. You know that. No, but that
we don't talk about it.
But it's like they say, don't ever buy the first, don't be the first ones to go buy whatever, the first model of a car or something. They got to get the bugs worked out. So maybe it's, let's let other people work the bugs out. Yeah. I wouldn't, and I've seen some of those pictures of folks who have been in bars and been in.
Someone here remember she's your boss. Which makes me laugh.
Yeah, I know, Sandy. I am. I'm forever grateful to you and thank you. So curtsy. But yeah, I don't think we are going to do this whole go out to dinner thing. Now I've got the husband, Sandy's husband is going to come after me.
Talk about people's fruit. Susan says, I'm meant to go to the hairdresser next week. Bit nervous about going out. See, I think it's really normal. I feel like at first we were all like, what do you mean I have to stay in my house? And like we were scared about what was going on. But now, do you want to say hi? Do you want to come up here? No, okay. He waved at you. Oh. But now that like we kind of got used to it, we are just like it's like, wait, I don't know if I'm ready for that to get back out there. It's an interesting theory or thought. Yes.
It's nerve-wracking because you don't know who has it. So many folks are, they don't have symptoms, but they have it. Owen, brother, how you doing, buddy? Owen, hey, buddy.
Is that your friend?
Yeah, we're buddies.
Hi.
But yeah, it is. It's nerve-wracking to think that there's this, and we don't really know a whole lot of. We don't know what the long-term impacts are. Not to make anybody else more nervous, but it is really, kind of unknown.
Right.
It's kind of interesting. Oh, we're gonna get a tour of the house.
It's not all house.
What is that? Is that a single chair?
Don't show everyone the snack cabinet. Sure. Let's a toddler in quarantine.
No, did you see Tina Fey's kid come in the other day? Did you see that video? She was on Stephen Colbert or one of the other shows, Fallon or somebody, and her daughter, who's like 11, came in, and like Tina Fey's sitting there doing the interview, and she looks up, and her kid's standing there, and she's like, so, is there something you needed? And her daughter just went and then left. So it was very funny.
I love that.
So look up Tina Fey. Oh, Jamie wants show and tell time. I would have liked to have gone through your cupboard too. That would have been interesting. What's your?
We've just got like all the snacks for a toddler.
Oh, okay. What are the snacks for a toddler?
Gummy bears.
Okay.
Pretzels. Mm-hmm. We had some cheese puffs in there. Jimmy, you let me know what you want to say.
Yeah, so Suzanne and Sandy and everyone, we're with you. It's a bit more now to open back up. So, it is. It sounds like a cat.
No, he was just mad because I had the pretzel that he didn't want.
Oh, okay. I understand that. Wow. Well, you know what? As I think of pretzels, there's one thing that I like to think of. And you know what that is? That's Gabe Howard, our guest.
I always think of Howard when I think of pretzels.
Did you see how we did that, Gabe?
I'm very sad. I have no children in my home, and you're listing off gummy bears, pretzels. I'm like that. You're describing my pantry. Just what's up? That's messed up. Why are you being so mean to me? If you say you have juice boxes in there, that's not a 2-year-old's home. That's the Howard household.
So, Gabe Howard. Gabe and I have been friends for couple of years here. He is a big, very valuable mental health advocate. He is a nationally known speaker. He goes all over the country, has national, some podcasts. I guess all podcasts are national, aren't they?
You can listen to him wherever you want. So.
Okay. I don't know this whole podcast stuff, but he's got podcasts, the psychcentral.com, Not Crazy podcast, also just the Psych Central podcast. So lots of stuff, and we are so excited to have you on today, Gabe. Thank you so much for coming on.
That's my excited. Thank you so much for having me. I really appreciate it.
So what is it? What got you into being a mental health advocate and all the work that you do?
I was diagnosed with bipolar disorder. If that was the spark, right? Before I was diagnosed with bipolar disorder, I was just like everybody else. I believed all the myths. I thought it was fake. I thought it only happened to bad families. I was uneducated, malinformed, as was my family, and this allowed me to get sicker and sicker and sicker because myself and my family and all the people around us, we saw the symptoms of bipolar disorder as a behavioral issue. Mm-hmm. So my family tried to punish the symptoms of mental illness out of me, and it spoiler alert, it didn't work. I want to be clear, it did not work.
So did you, the whole time that, the folks are thinking it's, some kind of behavioral issue, were you even questioning, why can't what's wrong?
I didn't think anything was wrong. Listen, I wanted to be a good kid. And as funny or as interesting as it sounds to say that my parents tried to punish the symptoms of bipolar disorder out of me, it's not quite that simple, right? The symptoms of bipolar, and I don't know why I made air quotes, the symptoms of bipolar that they were seeing was I was staying up all night and now couldn't get to school. Now that's what mania looks like. And I would talk 100 miles a minute talking about how great I was, and just, that's what grandiosity in bipolar disorder looks like. But it's also your kid is an entitled brat that won't shut up. It's also your kid's making bad choices and now can't make it to school. And then finally the depression hit and I wouldn't want to go anywhere. My parents would be like, look, you got to leave your room and join the family. I don't want to. Well, now we've got to teach them the value of family, and you have to eat dinner with us even though we're boring. And I just described 3 symptoms of mental illness that also, they look a lot like being a teenager, right? But there was no way for them to tease that out. Finally, the last little part that I always like to tell, bipolar disorder is a spectrum illness. So right over here, you've got you've got mania, just larger than life, consequence-free environment. You feel like God. And then all the way down here, you've got suicidal depression. You're worthless and you're garbage. And a lot of people understand that. It's right in the name, bipolar, 2 poles. But bipolar disorder is a spectrum illness where you're just constantly moving back and forth. And I point that out because sometimes you're right in the middle. You're normal, you're typical, you're doing all of the things like a normal teenager would do, or as my parents took it, the punishments were working. And then when I would hit the polls, they would be like, why are you behaving this way? We know you can be good. We've seen it. And that compounded the problem more and more and more and more and more and more.
Wow.
So was there a situation that led to your diagnosis? Like if it was your parents were like, oh, he's being a teenager, he's just being a jerk, not listening. How did, I assume, I don't mean to put those words in your mouth.
You nailed it.
But how did you come to getting that diagnosis?
So eventually I became an adult, and it was no longer my parents' problem. I was society's problem. And I was very fortunate in that I had very, very marketable skills. In the mid 90s, I understood computers, networking, information technology. And for the younger folks, that was back when you had to explain to people what the internet was. Facebook wasn't even invented. Google wasn't even invented. hell, when I started out, Yahoo wasn't even invented. Yahoo was before Google, for you late bloomers out there. And I understood all of this. So I made really, really good money. And I only point that out because the one thing that we all know about mental illness is that people who are mentally ill don't have jobs. And what we also know about mental illness is that people who are mentally ill don't make good money. They don't get married. They don't buy houses. They don't have nice cars. I am saying this sarcastically, of course, but this is what we believed. We decided that I was fine and that there was nothing wrong because I made good money. Well, things were very wrong. I was very suicidal. I was very delusional. I was going back and forth between thinking that I was, God's gift to the world, all the way down to I was garbage, and if I died, my family would celebrate, and back and forth and back and forth and back and forth and back and forth. And it was awful. But I was an adult and I was on my own and I was paying my own bills. So, it's easy to hide things from your parents when you're an adult. Nobody calls up their mom and dad and tells them all of the bad things they did. Mm-hmm. You call up your parents and tell them all the good things that you did. So my parents are like, hey, Gabe's doing great. Every time he calls me, he has good news. in the meantime, I'm just not telling them how bad it was. And finally, I just got so desperate, so sick, so delusional, so depressed that I had a suicide plan. I was ready to go. And that's where that little spark of luck really kicked in, because somebody noticed and somebody got me the help that I needed, took me to the emergency room. I was committed and I started to get, I was committed to the psychiatric hospital, and I started to get the help that I just so desperately needed.
Mm-hmm. And it saved your life.
Literally. Some people say, to their friends, you saved my life, and you're a real lifesaver. No, this isn't an expression. If she had not come along, I would more likely than not be dead.
Mm-hmm. And with that bipolar diagnosis, I mean, we use that term in society as almost an insult. Oh my God, she's so bipolar.
Yeah.
And we don't do that for like, oh my God, that person's so muscular dystrophy, or anything like that. So what was that also almost a stigma that you believed that, oh my God, now I've got this.
Yeah, we really had this very narrow margin of mental illness. Mental illness, and that's how we thought of them. We didn't understand major depression, anxiety, schizophrenia, bipolar. No, it was just mental illness, like that one catch-all. And mental illness, it looked a certain way, right? It was the rocking back and forth. It was the drooling. It was the not being intelligent. It was the clammy skin. It was violence. It was creepiness. It was, it was television, right? It was Hollywood. And these people came from broken homes and their mothers were awful. It's always the mom's fault for reasons I don't understand. We thought we knew. We did. And I say we because, I believe this. My parents believe this. The people around me believe this. My teachers believe this. Looking back from this vantage point backwards, how the hell did we miss this? I mean, just wow. It was so obvious. But it's not obvious if you don't know. Mm-hmm. They really honestly thought that it was a behavioral problem, and they reacted accordingly.
And probably a phase, because I've heard that too. Oh, they're just going through a phase.
It's a phase. It's hormones. He'll grow out of it. Boys will be boys. He's sowing his wild oats. I mean, just that. There is no end. On one hand, my parents must think really highly of me to excuse all of this horrific behavior that really just put my family through it. It was terrible. Mm-hmm. I mean, it was absolutely, frankly, it was scary. I don't understand it. Honestly, looking back, it's just, it shows you really the power of, that inch by inch, right? Just, there was a line and my parents were like, well, if Gabe crosses that line, we'll get him help. But I crossed that line just a little bit. So they went ahead and moved the line just a little bit. And before we know it, I'm miles past the original line, but it was just, something horrible would happen. And and then I would be fine for a while. So they thought it worked. They thought it worked. It's an insidious illness. There's a whole medical industry that can't keep up with this. There's nurses and doctors and case managers and Tonys and Gabes and just there's all of us here, and we're all trying to get a handle on it. It's just it's really nimble. It's a nimble little illness, and it messes you up.
And I've always, the one thing that someone in the field uses, mental illness is a mean disease.
It's mean. I call it an asshole.
Is that? I mean, you know what I've heard? Oh wow! You actually did write a book that mental illness is an a-hole.
An a-hole.
There you go. There it is.
Nobody will know what that word is because you used aspexes.
Right. But that is
tricked everybody.
Your book. What does this book go into?
It's 380 pages of awesome. It goes into everything. I'm really fond of saying that there is something in this book that you will completely agree with. There is something in this book that you will unequivocally disagree with. There's something that will make you really happy, and there's something that will just make you very angry, and everything in between. And I think that's really good. I really hate. This is what makes me not popular. I really hate this whole side thing that we have going. It's like a heroes versus villains mentality. It's this way is right, this way is wrong, this is the best practice, this is the worst practice, you're doing it correctly, you're doing it incorrectly. And then society has to like pick a side to be on. The reality is everybody's a little bit right and everybody's a little bit wrong. And that bar moves depending on who you are. I was talking about at lunch today with a CIT officer, and he said, well, I've been advising people that if they don't get along with their psychiatrist, they should get a new psychiatrist. And I said, you have health insurance, don't you? And he said, well, of course I have health insurance. I'm a police officer. And I said, well, you realize that maybe the people that you're working with don't have health insurance, and they're on a 6-month waiting list, and they don't just have the opportunity to just go to another psychiatrist. They're on the waiting list, and there's only one that will see them, and they have to pay out of pocket, and they have a sliding scale. You're literally advising people to leave the only support that they have. Like, well, crap. But listen, he's right. For me, when I had a psychiatrist tell me, well, I don't think you'll ever work, I fired that person and got a new person. And that was very beneficial to me because that was horrible advice. But it's not good advice if this is the only game in town.
Yeah.
We're trying to make laws that work for entire states. Not every state is Columbus or Cincinnati. Some are Akron. Some are little, Portsmouth or small towns, or there's towns that have 500 people in Ohio. Right. It's not one size fits all, and we really tend to treat it that way. And I really believe that my book covers as much of that as humanly possible. And frankly, it's not going to tell you what to do. People are disappointed sometimes. They're like, hey, I read your book and I still don't know what to do. I'm like, yeah, you've got to figure that out for yourself. They're like, oh, what book do you recommend to tell me what to do? None of them. I recommend none of them. I recommend that you figure it out yourself. That's critical thinking skills are important.
I'm with you, because I always get cracked up over self-help books.
Yeah.
If it's self-help, you're helping yourself. Why do you need a book? I mean, it just doesn't make any sense to me.
I agree with you that self-help books suck. I really don't understand it. But my publisher launched me in the self-help category.
Oh, well, now that
every time I say self-help books suck, I get an email from the publishing company that's like, you have to stop saying that. We only publish self-help. I understand what they're saying, and the world's not clean, right? Well, where else am I going to follow under? I think there should be a self-empowerment section. That section doesn't exist.
Yes. Well, and with that, the whole self-help piece, I do think though that from your book, I think Keiko is having.
Bye, Keiko.
There's it again.
The mother of a 2-year-old. But I do think that listening and learning from other stories can help you, with whatever it is, but you don't have to, it doesn't have to be the be all and end all of advice. And, but, being able to hear your story and understand your observations, I think are really valuable.
I cannot agree more. A long time ago, I decided that I wanted to be a public speaker or an influencer, as we're called now. And, I started, the podcast that you mentioned. And very early on, there was this, when you go through like the podcast models, they're like, okay, you've got to build followers. You got to build followers. You got to build followers. That's something that you hear in influencer marketing, like online advocacy work, public speaking work. And I just thought, I don't want followers. Mm-hmm. Like I'm not looking to make followers here. I'm looking to make critical thinkers. Now I hope that they will use that critical thinking and decide that I'm right and follow me. So it's not completely clean. I mean, I need to make a living like everybody else, but I'm really uncomfortable with the idea that somebody would just blindly follow me. Because I don't always make the best decisions for Gabe. I would like to say that I do, but I don't. I'm a human. I make mistakes all the time. But if somebody is following me, that means that I have to make decisions for them too. And that's just too much pressure. What I really want to do is get information, ideas, and experiences that maybe they couldn't get on their own in front of them. Give them things to consider, to love or hate or disagree with, so that they can think about that and make the best decision for themselves. In the end, I guess that makes you a fan. Maybe I'm more comfortable with that. I don't know, but sincerely, I want people I want people to think about this on like a really deep level. It's very serious.
Yeah. And I mean, that's why I married a strong woman, because I don't make very good decisions for myself. I mean, I left last week. My kid got kicked out of his 4th grade or 5th grade class because I left my Walking Dead background on my Zoom, and he got kicked out because of the zombies. So I'm not good on my own. I realize that. So to have this other person that relies on me is totally out of question. Please don't do that to me.
Awesome.
But I also like your book because it talks about mental illness and some of the issues surrounding it from a very practical point of view. It is not all this research and the oblongata or whatever that part of the brain is. And all, it's from a very practical and real sense. And I really like that about your book.
One of the things that I'm really, really good at, if I had any superpower, it's taking high level concepts and explaining them for lay people. And I always tell this little story. My dad is a retired truck driver. He was a manual laborer his whole life. He has a 4th grade education, and he's just he was a manual laborer. He did not have a thinky job. And when his oldest son, got diagnosed with bipolar disorder, my father was terrified. He's like, what's happening? My kid is sick. Like I think we can all relate to the fear that any reasonable parent would have upon hearing that their child was sick. So my father runs out into the world to try to learn all about bipolar disorder. And it's just a nightmare. It's a nightmare for him. This was back in 2003, so there weren't a lot of websites hanging around. They were harder to find. Google wasn't barely a thing. And when he would ask doctors, they would say, "Oh, sir, you don't have to worry. Bipolar disorder is just alternating between extreme highs and extreme lows. Anything else I can answer for you today, sir?" And my dad's like, "What? What extreme highs and lows? What are you talking about? It's going to climb stuff?" It was just a mess. It was an absolute mess. And I was, of course, learning about it at the same time and then explaining this to my dad. And I realized that I had been doing some version of this my whole life. My father and I both loved computers. I would learn about computers on a really high level and explain them to my dad very simply. And that's how come I was really good, in information technology and computers and networking before the internet was a thing, because I had been explaining it to newbies my whole life. And that was just how my family operated. I don't want anybody to hear this as me calling my father stupid, because he's not. He just needs stuff explained to him in a way that he can understand it. And I was able to. I don't know why. And that has really been the basis of my career, explaining high-level concepts simply. And I think that's really needed in the space.
Even when you're speaking about like bipolar, that in itself is hard to understand, but it's almost, and totally correct me if I'm wrong, but I have family members who are bipolar, so I've grown up in those households, and it's almost easier to understand when you live through it.
I think that, you know, there's so many ways to answer that question, but it's, everybody learns differently, right? There's my best friend who has a physics degree. She can pick up pretty much any math book in the world, read it, and boom, that is a concept that she now has in her brain. I barely understand that 2 + 2 = 4, and then if you change the equal sign to a minus, 4 - 2 = 2. Yeah, did you know that math works forwards and backwards? Like that.
Very good at this.
I know, that blows me away. Look how simple that was. And I'm just like, so, but the reason that I understand math, physics, scientific theory, calculus is because I did it hands-on. I didn't read a book and teach myself. That would be impossible for me. I learned it in school with teachers, professors. I moved the blocks around. I had the word problems to apply geometry in the real world. Like, geometry makes no sense until somebody says you use geometry to fill your cabinets up when you get home from the grocery store so that it all fits. And I'm like, it's Tetris. So these examples start to make sense for me. And then I can apply that. And that's how it works. I think mental illness is largely the same way. I mean, one, we're all afraid of it. Two, the misinformation on social media, pop culture, movies, television, books is just, it's permeated our culture in a way that education has not yet. And finally, nobody's really looking for the real answers. But once you've experienced it and you have this emotional attachment to a person, it becomes a lot easier to understand. My parents aren't afraid of bipolar disorder because in order to be afraid of bipolar disorder, they'd have to be afraid of their son. And that's the backwards math, right? They're not afraid of their son. They love their son. And therefore, they're not afraid of bipolar disorder. You remove Gabe Howard, their son, from the equation, and they're terrified of mental illness again. And that's what we've got to get out there. We've got to make people stop thinking about bipolar, schizophrenia, major depression, and have them start thinking about Gabe and other people living well with the illness. And that's a tall order because, well, frankly, we get kind of put upon a lot by being honest about it. Stigma and discrimination is a very real thing. Don't be bipolar and a teacher, or don't be an open bipolar and a teacher, because it could impact your career. So if you want to be a teacher and you have bipolar disorder, there's a lot of people who hide. Well, doesn't that kind of mess up our statistics right there? Well, people with bipolar disorder can't be teachers. I don't know any.
Yeah.
Who do you think that is?
Well, and attorneys, I've heard they could be disbarred. And yet attorneys also have higher suicide rates. So it's, there are obvious, some folks who are struggling.
Please imagine that. If you're open and honest about having mental illness or being suicidal, you could lose your job. And because you're not open about it, the suicide rate is higher. I don't know. That doesn't track for me. It's not a good thing. It's just not a good thing. And it needs to change. And it is changing, just ever so slowly. Ever so slowly.
Well, let me ask you, this might be a loaded question, but do you think that you have a way of how people can help it change?
So I always answer this question in two ways, and I want to be very, very clear. The first way that I want to answer it is no. No, I have no idea. And here's why. Because this is a major problem. This is a systemic problem impacting 400 million people in America alone. And if Gabe Howard, with no budget, no doctors, no research, had the solution, you should probably not count the solution. Generally speaking, when we have major systemic issues, we have research and studies, and you talk to people other than yourself and the people that you run into at conferences. So I really think that that in order to come up with an answer to this, we really need to put some time, energy, effort, money, and professionalism behind it. Something that, well, frankly, we're not really doing. There's not a lot of real good studies about how to improve the mental health safety net on a national level going on. There's statewide studies, and even them are very crippled more often than not. So I always like to say that. But then, so that's the no. But then I also want to say yes, because I do believe that there are things that we can do. If you live with mental illness, being open and honest about it does help, because crisis in mental illness is very public. It is just very public. If I have an episode in public and the police come, or I start yelling at the convenience store cashier that they're a dragon that's trying to eat me, and my parents have to come and get me, or I think that I'm being attacked by the hostess cupcakes, so I start smashing them and yelling about the hostess dragon, and then somebody's like, he's bipolar. Everybody's going to think, oh, that's what bipolar is. In the meantime, I've been coming to that same convenience store every day for 10 years, and nobody said, oh, how people with bipolar disorder are. They stop by to get their Diet Coke and pretzels every morning. So only having this crisis point as sort of the model or the viewpoint or the understanding of mental illness is absolutely hurting us. So if more people could be open about it, that would be very, very beneficial. And secondly, if you are open about it, this is a hard one for my community, don't be so angry. And I hate to say it, but if you're open about living with bipolar disorder and somebody says, oh man, I dated this woman and she was so bipolar, and you turn and start yelling at that person, telling them how insensitive they are and what a jerk face and how dare they make your illness, you're not doing anybody any good. Unfortunately, not only do you have to live with bipolar disorder, but you also have to be an advocate and a spokesperson for the cause. Mm-hmm. And what works better, of course, is saying, it's interesting. It's interesting that you use that phrase. May I ask why? Well, because she's crazy. Oh, okay, well, now hang on a second. Crazy is a slang term. It just means that she's acting abnormally or she caused you some pain. But you specifically said bipolar. Now, bipolar is very specific. It's an illness with a definition and medical criteria. Is there a reason you chose it? Well, because I see everybody with bipolar acting this way. Okay, well, that's very interesting. I have bipolar disorder and I'm not acting that way. So you mean that your girlfriend is like really cool and awesome and does a lot of good work for society? No, you don't, do you? So you're only focusing on one portion of bipolar disorder to make your insult. And then they start thinking about it and they think, I'm going to call her crazy from now on.
See, and I think that's something, because working in a past environment, we would get lots of letters from people, and if you went to that anger level and really just over the top, then you reinforce the stigma of that person's just out there, that person's crazy. So yeah. Man,
it's extraordinarily unfortunate to find ourselves in this point in this position, because people living with mental illness have a lot to be angry about. Many of us are homeless. We can't get access to care because we don't have health insurance. The mental health safety net is barely a torn up sheet. It's awful the way that we're talked about, treated, discriminated against, and stigmatized in society. And on top of all of that, we have to be nice about educating you. I understand why people are angry. I think that they are right to be angry. I am just simply telling you that anger doesn't work. It does not work as an advocacy point. And if your goal is to make life better for the next version of you, I always say that I'm doing this for the next Gabe. I am doing this so that the next 25-year-old who wakes up in a psychiatric hospital after being committed because of being depressed and delusional and suicidal, they have better resources than I did when I woke up there. And unfortunately, that does mean that I have to be polite in an instance where I have every right to be angry. And that's frustrating. But advocacy isn't about Gabe. Advocacy is about doing what works. If you want to be angry, That's your choice, but then you got to remember you're doing it for you. If you want to be an advocate, you got to think about all the people around you. And what works best for all the people around you is a professional, well thought out approach. And that's, I feel that's why I've been successful, because I don't call people names.
Mm-hmm.
Often. Sometimes I do.
So how has COVID been for someone, for, you have bipolar, you're, all that. How has COVID been for you?
Listen, all of my coping skills are now illegal. It's funny, but I'm not kidding. In Ohio, things are starting to open. So they're less illegal today than they were 2 weeks ago, but I don't like to be cooped up. I really am one of these people that climbs up the walls. And one of the ways that I handle that is like I work in public, right? I take my laptop and I sit at, a coffee shop or a fast food restaurant or, a restaurant. I sit in the lounge or the bar area and I sip my Diet Coke and I work. And I watch all the people, I make small talk with the people around me. Sometimes I get in discussions, which I really enjoy. And then, 4 or 5 hours later, I come home and my work is done and I feel pretty refreshed and I'm ready to be home, Gabe, now. Mm-hmm. Well, everything that I just mentioned, illegal, all illegal. Mm-hmm. Again, things are starting to open up now, but they for 9 weeks, illegal. So that's been really tough. A lot of my friends don't even want to hang out. Understandably so. I have a friend who is a doctor, and she's like, "Look, I'm in a hospital. I work in a hospital. I'm not going to see you until this is over because I'm not having you getting COVID on my conscience. I would rather not see you for 3 months and have a clean conscience than hang." Well, this means my friend who I'm used to coming to my house, who I'm used to ordering pizza with, who I'm used to watching, movies and staying up all night and binge watching Netflix, they're not coming over. The only person I have to talk to right now is my wife. I am so sick of her. I am so tired of her. We have undate nights. Before this whole thing happened, we blocked off one night a week where we went out together so that we could connect as a couple. Now we block off one night a week where you're dead to me. It's the healthiest thing we can do because we're driving each other nuts. We're both just at home staring at each other all day. We don't have anything left to talk about.
It's hard. Like just taking that one night and like taking a break from each other. I kind of like that idea, and
it's an undate night. Yeah. I go in one room, she goes in the other, and we pretend that we're not home. I'm very genuine when I say that, I survive off of routine and coping skills, as do most people managing serious and persistent mental illness, whether it's major depression, anxiety, bipolar disorder, schizophrenia, psychosis, etc. Routine, sleep schedule, coping skills. These are huge components, and it took me years to find them. So I can't just make new ones in the drop of a hat. I'm trying to rely on the old ones that have been honed over years, and I can't go to the mall and walk around because it's closed. It's hard. It's very, very hard.
Is there anything that you're doing? I mean, I know you said you can't just come off the fly with new coping skills, but is there anything else that you've, besides the undate night, which I really do love that idea, but is there anything else that you are doing that you feel like is kind of helping in replace of those skills?
Yeah, I do. Helping is the right word. I want to be clear. I haven't found any like solid replacements, but one of the things that I always did is I woke up every morning and I would go to McDonald's and I would get a Diet Coke and I would sit at McDonald's for a couple of hours. Well, obviously, in the age of COVID, you're not allowed to do that. The dining rooms are closed. So I still get up every morning, take a shower, get dressed, do everything, and I still go to McDonald's. unfortunately, I cannot stay, so that it's gotten much shorter. But I still drive my rear to McDonald's. I walk in, I stand in the social distance line, I order my Diet Coke, they give it to me, I say thank you, I get in my car and I drive home, and then I sit at the kitchen table and I pretend that I'm in a McDonald's restaurant, and I use my little phone and I drink my Diet Coke, and so it's similar, right? I still, the routine of going out to get the Diet Coke or the coffee or the whatever, that one of the reasons that's a routine is because it forces me to get dressed, right? It forces me to take a shower, put on clothes, get presentable to the world, and then go out in public. I still get to interact with some people. I pass people on the road. I see the cashier. And then by driving at home and sitting at my kitchen table, not my office, this is my office, I sit downstairs, it sort of simulates this idea that I'm not yet ready to go into my office and begin my day. I have found that to be very beneficial. The on-date night, believe it or not, it is helpful. The other thing is my wife is working from home and I'm working from home. So we instituted this policy where we just don't talk to each other during business hours. Now, I'm not saying we just outright ignore each other. It sounds so much worse than it is, but if I'm in my office working and she comes in to say, hey, how are you? That interrupts my work. If she's downstairs in the dining room working and I walk over and say, hey, honey, how's your day? That interrupts her work. So we pretend like we are separated by 15 miles and office walls. So if I walk up to her while she's working, this would be the literal equivalent in our minds of me getting in the car, driving to her work, walking past reception unannounced, walking into her office and saying, hi, honey, how are you? She's like, oh my God, why are you in my office? And we're approaching it that way. And those boundaries have really helped. And that has helped.
But that doesn't mean you don't love. I know you love your wife. I've seen you and her together, and you love each other. So, but it does go back to
watching.
What's that?
Just in case she's watching. I love you, honey. Yes, no, it's not about right. It's not about love. It's not. I know that parents all over the nation love their kids, but for pretty much the first time in history, the social media trends about how much parents hate their children. Just usually the pictures on social media are of beautiful children and beautiful moments, and it's, oh, my 1-year-old can read perfectly and does calculus, and it's always just so flowery and just this rose-colored glasses of parenting. And now, for probably the first time in history, it's like, I want my kids to go to grandma and grandpa's now. So there's no doubt.
I think I just saw today there were people who, the last day of school photos that you normally take. Well, there's like, now it's the parents. It's like the last day of teaching in quarantine. And like, that's the new thing.
Yeah, but it's understandable. Our routines are broken up. Look, I'm gonna babysit a 2-year-old tomorrow. I love her. She's so beautiful and so great. And she's gonna get here at 7:45 in the morning, and I'm gonna be so happy to see her. And every hour after that, my enthusiasm is gonna wane until at 6 o'clock, I have her like tied to the mailbox post with a sign on her forehead that says, "Text me when you get her." And that's okay. It's. We set these really, really ridiculous expectations that we're supposed to just be in like full-blown love and 100% engaged every moment of every day with our families, our children, our friends, our spouses. That's not realistic. And a really powerful coping skill right now is to acknowledge that it's okay to be annoyed by your family, by your children, by your loved ones. It's okay. You're annoying them too. Just you need to accept it and be okay with it. And I think we're just setting ourselves up to fail, thinking that it's ridiculous not to be. And that helps. Because I felt really bad about it at first. Like, oh my God, my wife is annoying me. That's so terrible. Like, what kind of a husband am I? And the answer is I'm a normal one.
Mm-hmm. Keiko, do you think you're annoying your husband?
I know I'm annoying him.
Yeah. She's like, I don't think it. I have proof. I got a text right here that says I like that on date night idea.
He goes out every day, so he gets to go out the house, whereas I'm here with our 2-year-old and I'm also working. So it's like, my fuse is like so much shorter now by the time he gets home. And I'm like, well, why would you put the towel there? Why wouldn't you hang it up right there? I don't and it's like, oh, okay, sorry. Like, so I know I'm annoying him, but he also knows that he's annoying me.
Okay. I really, when this whole thing first started, there was all of these memes on Facebook. It's like, take the time to learn a language, take the time to learn a new hobby, take the time to learn an instrument. And I thought, at first I was like, oh, that's a good idea. And for some people, it may well be a good idea. But I think it had this unfortunate side effect of creating this unrealistic expectation that if you didn't learn an instrument, a language, or develop a new hobby, or become a professional chef during the pandemic quarantine, that you somehow wasted your time. And I don't think that's a good message at all. If you survived, you spent the time perfectly. And I think that does need to get out there. Look, if you can learn a new language or an instrument, hey, way more power to you. But if you don't, and you live through it, and life gets back to normal, that's real success. And I think we need to pat ourselves on the back for it.
Gwendolyn says that she's never enjoyed the bathroom door locked so much in my life. She, I would like to point out, has a newborn and a 3-year-old, almost 3-year-old, and her husband at home with her.
Way too many people.
There's so many people. It's not enough.
So many. Get out of my house. I'm getting annoyed with my dog. That's how bad it is. I'm like, oh, you again?
Yeah, mine's annoyed with me is back here. I've completely bored the living crap out of this guy. I mean, it's guy's looking for some way to escape.
My puppy used to podcast with me, but now my puppy hangs with my wife.
Oh, that's.
I know. I lost my co-host.
I have 2 dogs. If you want one of them as your new co-host,
Maybe we could
dog, toddler,
for a week, just to hang out with a different dog for just like a pet swap. Like we'll just all swap each other's pets, so we can just.
Oh no, I don't want anyone else's pets.
Oh, never mind. I'm out. I'm out.
Show on Bravo, Pet Swap. Is that
See,
is it a show?
It's a wife swap.
I don't have cable. That's a whole different thing.
Oh, okay. I don't know about that. But Gabe, I think you've come up with a TV show though. Pet Swap, although he can't get past Wife Swap.
Oh, have you never heard of that show?
Oh, I didn't know you had those channels. I don't have cable.
Keiko, your dad says he's in. So to Wife Swap. So I think
he means dog swap.
Oh, okay.
I don't know. You might have said wife swap.
The name of my book. What is happening here?
He very well might be in on wife swap. My mom also just got chickens. My dad cleaned it all up, so he might need wife swap.
That's awesome. Awesome. You guys are fun.
Yeah. Why did you instead, when you were diagnosed with bipolar, there was at some point that, a lot of people do try to hide it or I don't want anybody to know about this, even from their family. Why did you become an advocate?
So, like everything in my life, it was an accident.
Mm-hmm.
When I was first diagnosed, obviously advocacy was the last. It was the last thing on my mind. I was just trying to get better, and from the time I was diagnosed to the time I got better, it took 4 years. I mean, it took a really long time. There was ups and downs, and good months and bad months. I mean, it was it was a real roller coaster ride, but. Reaching recovery and really being stable and in a position to, move forward with a typical or normal life took about 4 years. And as you can imagine, I saw some things, mm-hmm. and I saw some things that that really disturbed me. I went through some things that were very traumatic that I didn't want to happen to others. And my family went through a lot of stuff. I have a good family. So many people want to hear the story about how my dad was an alcoholic and beat me, and my mom, ran around and cheated on my dad, and that there was, drugs and alcohol. There was none of that. We were boring. We were so bored. We ate dinner together at night as a family. That's how boring we were. And they didn't know. These are good people who are engaged, and they didn't know their kid was sick. That haunted us.
Mm-hmm.
They couldn't have paid attention anymore if they tried. Like, short of us all sleeping in the same room, they were on top of us. That was a lot. And when I was sick, they got help from a local nonprofit. They took some classes, to learn about, what their family member was going through. And they went to some support groups. And, my family by this point lived in Tennessee. And when I got better, my mom said, or my grandma said, it's a national organization. You should look them up. They might be in Columbus. They might be in Ohio. And I did, and they were. And they were like, I was like, how can I help? I want to be a volunteer. And I didn't know what they were going to say. Honest to God, I had no idea. And they were like, okay, well, do this. So I did it. And then they were like, do this. So I did it. And then they just kept giving me things to do. And I just kept doing them. And after about a year of this, fundraisers, odd jobs, stuffing envelopes, this, that, and the other thing, they asked me if I wanted to give a speech at an event they were having, just a little 15-minute speech. And I said, sure, I'll give a speech. And I walked up on stage and I gave what can only be described as the worst speech in the history of speeches. I was horrific in almost every way. And they loved it. People stood up and I got a standing ovation. It's one of like 5. And it was, for lack of a better word, I caught the bug.
Maybe it was because you were leaving.
Yeah, I don't know. It really was just phenomenally awful. But people loved it and talked about it. And again, that same charity wanted me to serve on the board. A local affiliate hired me. I started doing public relations and fundraising for them. And I just worked there for a few years and served my time on the board at a pretty high level. I did stuff for the national organization. I flew to, the national conferences and presented. And all this time, I'm speaking more and more and more and more and more. And I'm honing those skills, honing the speaking skills, honing the writing skills. I took classes on public speaking. I went to Toastmasters. I videotaped myself and I was like, oh, I got to fix this and this. And I learned from other speakers. I got to meet other speakers. And, because when you go someplace to speak, there's usually more than one speaker. Well, when I first started, I was the last guy. I was the lowest one. Well, that means all the other speakers were higher above me. So I would just like grab their arm and I'm like, teach me everything you know. And they did. I asked specific questions. They would critique my speech, and I took all that to heart, and I just got better and better and better. And listen, that's all she wrote. This is what it turned into. I can tell you that even to this very day, I really always think that this speech is going to be the last one. It never really occurs to me that this is going to keep going. I'm still waiting for it to end. It seems like at any minute now, the world's just going to be done with me. I don't mean that in any negative way. I just think that nobody's going to want me to speak anymore. Nobody's going to want my story. Just, the next person's going to come along. I still feel that way to this day. I don't know if it's going to happen. Some bands last forever and some bands only have one hit. I don't know which band I'm going to be.
But going back to the original, almost the beginning of this, I think I think you are a good speaker. I've seen you speak, and really, really enjoy you because I think A, you're honest, and B, to your point with your dad, you're practical and you explain it in a way that everybody can understand. So that I think is so valuable and a lot better than sitting in a lecture talking about umblagatas.
I really, it's fascinating to me, and it's neither here nor there. It's just an observation. The majority of speakers on the circuit, they don't like the talk back. They don't like Q&A. They don't like group discussion. They're excellent speakers, and I have mad respect for them. I mean, sincerely, I don't want anybody to read this as an insult in any way, but they have their prepared monologue, their keynote, their presentation, their speech, and it is beautiful. It is, but they cut off Q&A. They cut off group discussion. They don't like that. People are really impressed with my ability to lead a discussion, especially when there's warring factions, right? You know, somebody will say something like, well, I think only women have mental illness, and they're like, uh-oh, and you know, then a man will say, how dare you? And then it just, but I keep it from devolving, and I don't know how. Some of it's innate, some of it is things I've learned along the way, de-escalation, some of it is good boundaries, some of it's support group training, but I enjoy it a lot because every group is different. You know, if I'm talking to a group of 50-year-old men who work in a car manufacturing plant, they're probably going to have different questions than a group of 20-year-old sorority women who are their junior year in college and taking their first psychology class. Mm-hmm. And that's why I really like the group discussion, the Q&A format. And I'd like to see me get out more and do that, because I think people feel better when they can say out loud the stuff that they're already thinking. Mm-hmm. And it's one of the things I've just always been good at. And I honest to God, don't know why.
Well, Gabe, this has been fantastic. And I thank you so much for coming on. This has been something we've been trying to plan for a couple of weeks. And so I'm so happy and thrilled that you are with us and that you've been so honest and upfront. And if you want to know more about Gabe, you can go to GabeHoward.com.
That is, hey, look, it's right there. I don't know if I'm pointing at it or not. Oh, you got it right too. It's all lowercase.
Very nice. Look at that.
It's all lowercase. The official writing of GabeHoward.com is all lowercase. And yeah, I pointed it right. The official is all lowercase, and I send it to everybody, obviously, as part of my press kit and my packet. And I would say about half of them capitalize the G and the H. And I'm like, stop it. It's all lowercase. It's a nod to my father. My dad's name is Gary, and he signs his name with a lowercase G. And I asked him why he did that, and he said, I want to give it some flair. I want to give it some flair. So I signed my name with a lowercase g. And as a nod to my father, GabeHoward.com is written in all lowercase, lowercase g, lowercase h. And that's the official writing, and everybody messes it up. So thank you. Thank you for getting it right.
And
it's on my business card that way.
All right.
Look at that. You did it right. Just in case people think I'm blowing smoke.
Well, and from there you can see your podcasts.
Oh, yeah, check it out.
You can download those. You can psychcentral.com, not crazy. Also the Psych Central show. You can somehow, I'm guessing there's a link somewhere on that website to order your book.
No. Yep. You can go over to GabeHoward.com. It is cheaper to buy it for me, and I'll send you stickers. I will send you pens, and all the stickers are gone. I will send, no, I mean, they're downstairs. They're just not near me. I will send you stickers and pens and all kinds of stuff, and I'll sign it. So if you loan it to somebody and you don't get it back, they will have, "Dear Tony, I think highly of you," written in the cover forever and ever, hopefully sparking some guilt at some future point when they realize they stole your book.
Do you know what you actually wrote in my book? I asked you to write it. It was, "Dear Tony, keep your pimp hand strong." That's how I had you sign that.
Oh, that's awesome. That's awesome. One of these days, that's going to bite me in the butt. I'm going to write something funny for somebody, and I'm going to try to run for political office, and they'll be like, "Look what he wrote. Look what he wrote on his own in his book." I'll be like, "He made me. He has no backbone." I'm like, "What's happening? He's a flip-flopper." I'm never going to be able to win. Great. Now I can't be president.
Look, You really think if you're going to run for office that keep your pimp hand strong is, I mean, it's on the inside of a cover of mental health is an a-hole. So,
You know,
I think there's a bigger issue there.
5 years ago, I would have thought that blatant misogyny would be a barrier to the presidency. But it turns out that blatant misogyny will help you get elected. So I think I just need to do more of it if I'm planning on running for president.
there you go.
Who knew?
Well, Gabe, thank you so much for joining us today. Again, go to GabeHoward.com. So happy that you could be with us, and just a great guy, and so grateful that you advocate not only here but in Ohio, but across the nation. So, big COVID hug to you.
Oh my gosh.
Did I do it right?
Yeah.
Make a distance.
Totally looks normal.
Oh, thank you, sincerely. Thank you very, very much. I really
Thank you
appreciate it.
so much. Have a good day.
Bye, guys.